2025 NFL Scouting Combine is just under 2 days away as I record this video, and yeah, of course, even closer than that when you guys are watching this video. So I figured I would bring you a list of potential Combine standouts, a watch list. This is what we're going to see. I should be live on this YouTube channel. I may decide to do it on Twitch. It's free. It's linked down below, twitch.tv/Bengal, but it may be live here. All times are Eastern. Thursday, we have defensive linemen and linebackers. Friday moves to defensive backs, tight ends. Saturday starts a little bit earlier at 1 Eastern opposed to 3. That's running backs, quarterbacks, and wideouts. And then Sunday, we finish up with offensive linemen also at 1 p.m. I will at least be live for some of that. But because I know not all of you guys are big college football fans, and even those of you that are, there will be some names on this list that you're not familiar with. I guarantee it. So we're going to go over some of the guys that are going to run fast, test really well in the agility drills, jump really well, and potentially even bench a lot as well, even though that's one I don't particularly care about. We're going to start here with Jordan Burch. Edge from Oregon, of course, transferred from South Carolina. Some of the numbers that I end up referencing in this video will be from the Feldman's Freak List. You can find that over on The Athletic. It's a really good list every year that comes out by Bruce Feldman, showcasing some of the craziest athletes in college football and some verified numbers. And these are some of the things that you can expect, or at least near to some of these numbers. Jordan Burch in the offseason delivered a 35-inch vertical jump. And of course, everything needs to be accounted for: the position, the height, and the weight. So an edge rusher at 295 pounds with a 35-inch vert is not exactly the same as a 5'10", 175-pound receiver with a 35-inch vert. Still a good number, but it's insane when someone close to 300 pounds does something like that. Also, just under 21 miles per hour via GPS time, has squatted up to 685 pounds, and a sumo deadlift of the same weight. Jordan Burch has fantastic explosiveness, and at this size, he's someone that should absolutely light up the combine. Should be a really fun name to watch. I'm sure there will also end up being more opt-outs as well. That's why you're not going to see names in this list that I expected to do really well, like Elijah Arroyo, Abdul Carter. Not that Shedeur Sanders would have tested very well, but he also is not participating for either personal or injury reasons. In the case of Elijah Arroyo, players opt out all the time. There may be some from this list that decide not to go, but Shamar Stewart, if he decides to test, I think will absolutely light it up. Listed over 280 pounds, just under 6'6". He is a freak off the edge. Explosiveness for days with interior defensive lineman type size. He's been listed close to 290 plus pounds. So this is someone that has a ton of flexibility on the interior or edge of a defensive line, and I think can make a big impact. When you watch him, as you're probably seeing from some of these clips, he is explosive as hell and has game record potential. He's someone I'm really, really high on in the 2025 draft, despite lacking top-tier production. And while there will be plenty of sleepers on this list, I think we're all probably pretty familiar with Travis Hunter at this point. The Colorado corner / receiver has a really good argument to be the number one receiver in the class, and I think he's certainly the number one corner. He is an absolute rare talent. I've really never seen anyone quite like him, and I think that's being overshadowed. I think people are getting kind of upset that he's kind of been pushed down our throats a little bit in terms of the media surrounding Deion Sanders and Colorado and Shedeur Sanders. But Travis Hunter was the number one recruit in the nation in his class, sometimes Walter Nolan, depending on where you looked. And he's carried that through his entire college career by being one of the craziest college players we've ever seen. Real Analytics via the Feldman Freak List gauged Travis Hunter's max speed on a touchdown-saving chase down against TCU over 21 miles per hour, and on an interception that he recorded against TCU, had a closing speed of 6.9 yards per second on a diving red zone interception, which would be the second fastest time on record for nearly 8,400 defensive backs in the entire Real Analytics database. So yes, not only is this guy just an incredible athlete, talent, even technician capable of playing corner and receiver at a high level, he is an unbelievable athlete. We'll see if he decides to test. He certainly has nothing to prove, but if he does, it's going to be fun to watch. And speaking of top corners, we got to talk about Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan. And this is not a best players at the combine video. This is potential combine standouts. And there are questions about Will Johnson's long speed right now. So I think of really anyone at the combine, if he decides to test, his 40 time could be a big stock maker or breaker for Will Johnson. He's kind of fallen out of the top 10 in a bunch of different mock drafts, and not everyone is super high on him based on his 2024 tape. There are questions about whether he can keep up with deep speed type receivers, and I think he can eliminate those by running a fast time. If he can get down into the 4.4s, I think he might be a lock top 10 pick. And while I think the combine is a little bit overrated in how these teams draft players, it is another bullet point. It's another thing you can look to decide, okay, maybe we feel comfortable taking this player at number 7 overall, or wherever it might end up being. Will Johnson, while there are questions about his long speed, what is not in question are his verified agility times. So get this. Will Johnson had the fastest time this offseason on the entire Michigan team, so pre-2024, in terms of the 3-cone drill. He did so with a 6.57 second time. For perspective, the best time during the past 2 years for corners at the last 2 NFL combines was 6.62, and the average time for corners was 6.88. Will Johnson 20-yard shuttle was also 4.05 seconds, which would have been third the past 2 years of the combine, and his former Michigan teammate Mike Sanders still did it in 4.01 seconds. And Will Johnson's broad jump is listed at 10.8.5. So very, very impressive numbers there. We'll see what the 40 time ends up being, but typically these guys that are quick and can jump are explosive athletes. I think Will Johnson can definitely get into the 4.4s and kind of solidify his case as a top 10 player. One of my favorite players in the draft is Alabama's Jahad Campbell. I think he's a really, really fun watch. I do kind of gravitate towards linebackers every year, but Jahad Campbell is a really, really fun one. 6'3", 244 pounds, which is elite overall size for an off-ball linebacker, but he was recruited as an edge rusher to Alabama. He's a 5-star recruit, and he shows the ability to get after the passer. This is someone who can make an impact not only blitzing from the inside, but also off the edge. I think Jahad Campbell is one of the more fun players in this entire class with his combination of size and athleticism. His burst is unbelievable. He's got sideline to sideline range. He's got the closing speed, obviously. Jahad Campbell is somebody that could absolutely come out and show out at the combine and post something in the low 4.5s or maybe even better, over 240 pounds. That would be absolutely ridiculous, and it's something that could happen. Also, it's worth noting that these height and weight numbers could change on the day of their measurements at the NFL Combine. So that's something to keep in mind. But right now he's listed at 244. Of course, depending on what his 40 time ends up being, and 10-yard split, if he ends up testing, it's going to be either more or less impressive if it's at a lower weight. If he's 6'3", 235, it's going to be very different than if he did it at 245 pounds. And speaking of impressive at a certain height and weight combo, let's talk about Michigan defensive tackle Kenneth Grant at 6'3", 342 pounds. Could also have included his teammate Mason Graham on this list, but Kenneth Grant is supposed to be especially insane given that he is over 340 pounds and is expected to run sub 5 second in the 40-yard dash. This is someone that could potentially get into the 4.8 range at 340 pounds. That would be absolutely ridiculous. And as you would expect of someone of his size, he's also especially strong, but his vert in the offseason was 29 inches, pretty good at 342 pounds, but pressed a 115-pound dumbbell 34 times on his right, 27 on his left, and did a Turkish getup with a 150-pound dumbbell. So obviously especially strong, but what maybe is even most impressive, other than the maybe 4.8 40-yard dash that is not necessarily expected, but is within the realm of possibility for Kenneth Grant, his GPS time was 18.75 miles per hour on a chase down of Katron Allen. This guy is a different level of athlete. Could be a fun one to watch on the defensive line. But I know you guys want to start talking about some real speed here. I love the defensive linemen, the linebackers, some of these bigger guys that can run really, really fast and jump really far and high and test well in the agility drills. However, I know a lot of people like the receivers and the corners that have a chance to come out and run in the 4.2s. Let's talk about Isaiah Bond. Alabama transfer to Texas. Had a little bit of an underwhelming season at Texas due to a bunch of different factors. Injury was a big one. Quarterback play was a big one. But Isaiah Bond is one of the fastest players in college football and has been over the past couple of years. He's someone that has a real chance to run sub 4.3. I think he's going to be nearly a lock to run in the 4.3s or below. He's got exceptional speed, and I think this is going to be someone that we start to talk about a little bit more after the combine. He's going to run a blazing 40 time. I don't know that he's going to be in the Xavier Worthy boat from a year ago, another Texas receiver, hook 'em horns. However, I do think Isaiah Bond has a chance to get down into the 4.2s. He's got a track background. This is someone who can really, really move. Should be a fun one to watch. I'll also quickly touch on Jaden Blue as well, another Texas player, hook 'em horns. He's a running back with just absolutely elite speed. This running back class has a bunch of guys that can fly. We'll talk about some of those guys later, and even one right after this. Jaden Blue has a real chance to be the fastest of all of them. He's someone that I think at 200 pounds could run in the 4.3s. He can absolutely fly. But my first real deep sleeper of the video is Delaware running back Marcus Yarns. Still an FCS level player, so it's not like he's playing especially good competition. However, did rip off like a 70-yard run against Penn State this past season in Delaware's lone score of the game. Marcus Yarns has very good overall speed. I like him, right? I think he's got the potential to get drafted. It is a really, really stacked running back class, but Yarns, I think, can make an impact as a returner and a rotational running back long-term. Has absolutely elite speed as well for a running back. In the offseason, his top speed was clocked close to 23 miles per hour with a vert over 38 inches. He's explosive, and he certainly has long speed for days. Marcus Yarns is another name to watch. All right, back to where I really want to be with the edge rushers. James Pierce Jr., 6'5", a little over 240 pounds. The big knock on him has kind of been that overall size, the weight, the play strength. But something that you can't doubt about James Pierce Jr. when you watch him is the get off, the explosiveness, the twitchiness. He really is explosive as hell. On a pick 6 this past year, in 2023, he was clocked at 23 miles per hour and could absolutely run in the 4.4s at 6'5", over 240 pounds. That would be absolutely unbelievable if he was able to do that. You're talking about, in that Montez Sweat territory for one of the fastest times we've ever seen from an edge rusher. Sweat carried a little bit more weight, of course, but James Pierce Jr. could be in that 4.4 range. I think Sweat was like, 4.39 or 4.41? I mean, Amari Barno is in that same kind of range. I think he might have gotten to the 4.3s, but yeah. James Pierce Jr. at 240 plus pounds could absolutely be a threat to run in the 4.4s. His 10-yard split's going to be insane as well. Probably 159, maybe a little bit lower than that. And I think pound for pound, maybe the freakiest player at the NFL Combine in 2025 could be South Carolina safety Nick Emmanwori. Emmanwori is kind of a do-it-all guy at the back end of a defense, kind of best near the ball, though. I think he's probably going to be one of those like apex defender, like overhang type of guys where he can play in the slot. He can play as like a sub linebacker type guy, but can also, I think, thrive in too high. It's very impressive to see him carry routes vertically. He's got a lot of speed at nearly 230 pounds, but everything about Nick Emmanwori screams explosiveness. He had a broad jump listed at 11.4, a vert at 42 inches, which is absurd, and has been clocked close to 23 miles per hour. He has everything you'd look for in a super athlete that could just blow up the NFL Combine. And Nick Emmanwori, I think, is going to be a name we start to talk about a little bit more in the first round as well. He is a very, very good prospect, but an elite athlete. We've got to include a couple offensive linemen on this list, and why not maybe the best one in the entire draft? That's Mizzou's Armand Membu, or Membo. I can't figure out a way to say it. He's Cameroonian. I don't have a huge familiarity with the pronunciations there. I think it's French, right? I think Cameroon's a French colony, but I don't know how to say it. I mean, please help me if you know. I've looked everywhere. There's no pronunciation guide as far as I can find on the Mizzou website. But anyway, at 6'3", 332 pounds, Armand Membu, or Membo, is certainly one to watch here. at the 2025 NFL Combine. Not only is he a smooth mover on tape, he's explosive. In the offseason, he was clocked a 10-yard time of 1.63. So for the offensive lineman, you're like running a 40, congratulations, doesn't really matter. What really matters is that 10-yard split, because that's going to be a more practical application of what you're going to do on a football field. How often is an offensive lineman running 40 yards and having it matter? It's not really that important, but the 10-yard times are. A 1.63 is very, very good. For perspective, like an elite time for an edge rusher is anything in that 1.6 or under range. So at 332 pounds, to just be over that slightly at a 1.63 is a very, very impressive 10-yard split. 2.8, 20-yard split. And of course, as you'd imagine, he is strong as hell. GPS time near 20 miles per hour, but a squat of 650, 375 clean, and is benched 425 pounds. It'll be interesting to see how many reps he can do of 225 at the combine. He's someone that does have, I believe, verified 34-inch arms, and as you get longer arms, makes it tougher to bench. But Membu doesn't have exactly the longest arms in the world, so he could put up a pretty good number in the bench press, as could somebody like Will Campbell, who definitely has short arms, but they might be as much as 33 inches, and that maybe leaves him at tackle long term. And now, while I think Armand Membu is a tackle, there are more questions about Will Campbell again, mostly due to that arm length, but there is a good chance he can also stick there. And I think a lot of teams are going to try him at tackle potentially before moving him to guard. But some of his athletic numbers, some of his potential testing, and some of the verified numbers we've had from the offseason say that he would just be such an elite guard, somebody that can pull, somebody that's so fast and strong. He's going to be a big-time player on the offensive line. I think regardless of what position he plays, Will Campbell's a really, really fun prospect. In 2023, he clocked the fastest max velocity of any offensive lineman in college football, hitting 17.9 miles per hour in a game. This offseason, again, this is from the Feldman's Freak List, he squatted 600 pounds, clocked a 1.5-second 10-yard split with a 1-yard lead in. That is absolutely ridiculous. Will Campbell has the strength and the movement skills. And again, for somebody with shorter arms, that will help him in the bench press. Again, if he decides to participate, I think that's where Will Campbell could really push himself ahead of his peers, because the tape is pretty good. Kind of been a little bit down on him due to that arm length, and that's kind of been a big talking point, but the tape is really solid. Again, I think he'd be a phenomenal guard. I definitely think he's got a chance to stick at tackle, but I think once you see this guy move in the on-field drills and put up some gaudy numbers in the testing, we're going to start talking about this guy like a top 10 player again. And Eugene Asante from Auburn is kind of one of these more modern NFL linebackers. They're not the Jahad Campbells of the world at 6'3", 245. 6 foot, 222, kind of, a tweener, safety, linebacker. What can he do? Well, he can really run, as can Jeffrey Bassa from Oregon could have made this list. But Eugene Asante is someone that can absolutely fly. I know Bassa had a faster posted GPS mile per hour time at the Senior Bowl, but Asante was right there. He's expected to run in the 4.4s or maybe 4.5 flat. He's going to absolutely tear it up. He's someone that is really, really explosive on tape at times as well. This offseason, again, leading into the 2024 season, squatted 635 pounds and benched 405. I think he's also a threat to tear up the bench for the linebacker group. Should really, really run fast. Definitely someone I'm looking for. And in that same vein as UCLA's Carson Swessinger, not going to talk about him for too long, but definitely plays fast. I don't know how much of that is due to instincts over anything else, but at only 225 pounds, certainly looks very fast, and he's another guy that I think, is going to be in that 4.5 range. Should post something very impressive. But maybe more than anybody, I am excited to watch Jalen Walker at the 2025 NFL Combine. 6'2", 245 pounds. Can maybe play off the ball, but I think his best projection, due to his explosiveness and throwing ability to rush the passer, will be off the edge. But his calling card is his athleticism. He might, alongside Nicky Minwari, post pound for pound the most impressive combine here in 2025. He's going to run probably low 4.5 or even into the 4.4s at 245 pounds. I think his vert, I think his broad are going to be insane. If I had to make, high-end predictions about what those could be. I think you're going to see a broad jump over 10.7, something in that range. A 40, again, and maybe high 4.4s, and that's kind of a high-end projection. Could even, exceed those expectations. And I think a vert somewhere in the 38-inch range, or excuse me, yeah, 38-inch range could be absolutely ridiculous for him as well. It's silly to talk about some of these numbers that he's expected to put up, but of anybody at the 2025 NFL Combine, Jalen Walker might be the guy to watch. Don't miss it. And I'm trying to shine light on a lot of different players. I know it's going to be a long video, but I can't include anybody. I feel like we're getting better and better athletes at the Combine every single year, and David Walker is no exception. He's a really interesting player because he's only about 6 foot, 267 pounds, though. It's quite an interesting build, but he was productive and talented at Central Arkansas. Again, very interesting build at 6 foot, nearly 270 pounds. However, some of his numbers are ridiculous. In the offseason at 6'2", 260, his 40 time was sub 4.6 at 4.59, 36-inch vert, and power clean 385. Very, very impressive. He's built kind of stout, but those numbers are anything but. All right, back to the offensive side of the ball. I know you guys care about so much. This is 6'5", 225-pound Savion Williams. It's a ridiculous build for a receiver, especially considering the way he can move. Savion Williams is still developing as a football player, but you can see that he's got already elite height and weight for the position. Factor that with a 10.6 broad jump, a 40-inch vert, being clocked at 22.5 miles per hour via the GPS time. And then on top of that, he's incredibly strong, 600-pound squat, 355-pound bench press with a 350 power clean. And he's also a former high school quarterback that can reportedly throw the ball 80 yards, reportedly, if you want to pronounce that word correctly. So this guy is just a do-everything monster. Now, not going to be an NFL quarterback, but Antoine Randall type moment, come in and end up throwing the ball down the field. At double pass could be very interesting, but this is someone you want to get the ball in his hands one way or another, which is weird for someone at 6'5", 225, but he moves a lot crazier than you'd expect. Can definitely jump out of the gym, explosive and twitchy at that size for sure. Now, catching the ball is a bit of a concern with Georgia wide receiver Arian Smith, but he can fly. If there's anyone that's a threat to potentially break the record this year, it would be Arian Smith. This is someone that will probably be at least top 2 when it's all said and done for 2025 Combine 40 time. There's no question about his speed. I think he is going to get into the 4.2s, which sounds ridiculous, but I think there's a pretty good chance it happens. He's got a track background, and he can really, really run. His pure receiving skills, very questionable, but his explosiveness is not. I expect the vert to be crazy. I expect the broad to be crazy, but that 40 time, do not miss it. I'm calling it. I'm thinking 4.25, which is a ridiculous expectation, but I think there's a chance Arian Smith meets that. Arkansas edge Landon Jackson is 6'7", 280, and definitely is not lacking in athleticism. He's one of these guys that you're projecting long-term you can develop and make something out of him. I mean, he's got decent production, but again, he's on this list for a reason. Should be another name to watch here when the defensive linemen go in a couple of days here. Landon Jackson has, at 6'6", 6'7", 280 pounds, topped out at 20.4 miles per hour via GPS time, broad jumped over 10 feet with a 34-inch vertical, and has power clean 350, bench 375, and squatted 505. And that's pretty impressive given his height. Super long arms. That bench is going to be interesting. I'm not sure he's going to absolutely tear it up in that department, but is incredibly strong and explosive, especially considering that height and weight. Here's another Jackson. It's Ohio State guard Donovan Jackson, but is he a guard? Played tackle when Josh Simmons went down and did so at a very high level. But outside of the good tape, Donovan Jackson is a very, very good athlete. 6'4", 320 pounds, benched 490 in the offseason, squatted 610. However, very agile at that size, but has a 1.59 10-yard split. That would be faster than any offensive lineman has ever clocked at the NFL Combine since the league officially has kept that as a stat. So Donovan Jackson here, if that 1.59 10-yard split holds up, it would be an NFL Combine record. Donovan Jackson already getting first-round hype after moving to tackle and playing really, really great down the stretch for an Ohio State team that won a national championship, greatly due in part to his play stepping in at left tackle. Well, he could be a first-round pick for more than just the tape. His film, very good, of course, but the athleticism may be even more impressive, and that ties everything together. He could be a top, 30 pick, I think, comfortably. Describing someone as a top 30 pick is an interesting distinction. I don't know why I decided to do that, but it happened. We're going to leave it in. And there are a bunch of really good players on the other side of the ball. Here's a defensive tackle from Florida State, Joshua Farmer. Good talk about Darius Alexander as well from Toledo. I think all these guys are going to end up testing pretty well, but deciding to highlight Joshua Farmer as I got Darius Alexander into the first round of my last mock draft. Talked about him a bit. Joshua Farmer, really haven't mentioned very much, but at 6'3", 314, very athletic. Clocked a 19.6 GPS time, miles per hour, in the offseason in pads, cleaned almost 400, squatted over 600, and benched over 400. I don't know what this next part is, but he had a Nordboard score, which measures eccentric hamstring strength of over 2.3, and the context on that is it's higher than you typically see for many skill position players. Ask Bruce Feldman. I don't know. It's something to add. He's a really good athlete. Jonas Savaiinai has kind of lost a little bit of steam throughout the draft process here, but is someone that could potentially stick at tackle or be a plus guard. I think he's got real starter potential. 6'3", 340, very athletic. In the offseason, ran faster than 19 miles per hour, benched 406, power clean 355, and squatted 532. Very impressive numbers, but I think that speed is what's most impressive to go along with that strength of 340 pounds. I mean, a 19 mile per hour verified time is extremely impressive at this size. And that's someone with the potential to run, right around 5 seconds in the 40. And if he runs any faster than that, look out. Back to the burners. This is Virginia Tech running back Bashal Tutin, another New Jersey guy. Gotta love it, alongside Jihad Campbell. Bashal Tutin's one of my favorite players in the draft. 5'8", 211, but he moves like he's a lot lighter than that. 4.32 40-yard dash in the offseason. Reached a 23.15 mile per hour in terms of max velocity. Benched 400 with a vertical jump of 39 inches at 211 pounds. It would be ridiculous if he came out and did any of that at the combine. The fact that he's a threat to potentially run in the 4.2s at 210 pounds, I mean, you've got to be kidding me. Big-time running back Bashal Tutin, one of the best 10 running backs in a stacked running back class. Love him as a player. If you need a running back, this is the year. Draft one in the mid-rounds. Round 2, round 3, round 4. Some really, really good backs are going to go off the board. And Bashal Tutin is not going to be a secret for very much longer. He's going to tear up Indy. As is Princely Uman Mielen, I think, from Ole Miss. Transferred from the Gators this past offseason. Princely Uman Mielen is someone that you'd like to see a little bit more effort at times, especially defending the run, but the burst is ridiculous. And at 6'4", 264, I think you're going to see him post some pretty impressive numbers given his size. I don't really think he's going to be a threat to run in the 4.4s or anything like that. But if he comes out and runs, anywhere close to 4.6 flat with a vertical jump over 35 inches, I think we're going to start to talk about this guy again like he's a potential first-round pick. There are some character concerns potentially with Princely Uman Mielen, some effort concerns, but the athleticism is real, and this is another projectable guy that is athletic, that if you can develop him, you're going to have a really special player. Okay, last defensive lineman. I hate to leave out Darius Alexander in a list like this, but I want to talk about Tyleik Williams a little bit. Someone I expect to go inside the top 50 or somewhere in that range or close to it if he doesn't quite go that high. But really, really good run defender. This is going to be a monster on first and second down. But I think also given his athleticism, you've got a chance to potentially develop him into a 3-down player. at 330 pounds, he might be someone that runs sub 5-second in the 40-yard dash. He supposedly could run in the 4.8s, which would be ridiculous given his height and weight. Tyleik Williams is definitely a name to watch. I'm not sure if we're going to quite get some of the numbers that people are suggesting, but there are times when you watch him on tape where this guy just explodes off the ball and is in the backfield immediately. So it would not be shocking to see him run in the 4.9s even, sub 4.5 or sub 5-second, excuse me. But in the 4.8s, man, if he can do that, just like with Kenneth Grant, that would be absolutely ridiculous. Okay, the last overall lineman here on either side of the ball is William and Mary offensive tackle Charles Grant. Someone that's developing a little bit more hype right now, although, I think we've talked about him a couple times here on the channel. He's someone that just entered into the top 50 on Daniel Jeremiah's big board, and his athleticism is ridiculous. 6'4", only listed about 300 pounds. Maybe even 6'4.5" is what I have here. Showed up to William and Mary at 240 pounds. Now, oftentimes when you get guys like this that put on a lot of weight and move to the offensive line, maybe they were a former tight end or defensive end, they kind of keep that movement ability. We've seen that before, and that's certainly the case with Charles Grant. Hit 21 miles per hour on the GPS, vertical jump 32 inches, and his arms measured at 35 inches. So you add elite length into the combination with elite athleticism, and apparently he clocked a 1.44 10-yard split, which is ridiculous for any offensive lineman, but really quite a good time for anybody. I don't know how true that's going to be. That would be an absolutely insane 10-yard split, really, for anybody, let alone a 300-pound offensive lineman. It's supposedly it's automatic timed. I don't know. A 1.44 10-yard split would be absolutely absurd for a 300-pound player. Would be absolutely absurd. Like, Xavier Worthy had a 1.49 10-yard split. I can't believe the 1.44. I really can't, but I mean, I guess we'll see. I can't believe that, but we'll see. Maybe it's a typo and it's supposed to say 1.54, which is still ridiculous. Even if it's a 1.64, that's still a good time for him. I don't know. And the last guy we'll talk about is Tennessee wide receiver Dante Thornton. Just another height, weight, speed freak type receiver. 6'5", 214 with pretty good explosiveness off the line for somebody of his size, and definitely good long speed again for that height and weight. Dante Thornton is someone that could be a real steal down the board here, potential starter, and he's got more than just athletic ability. But again, this is a combine video. I think he's going to end up testing pretty well. I think you're going to see a really good vert and broad jump for him alongside a pretty good 40 at 6'5", 214. Thornton is the last player we're going to talk about in this video. There are plenty more that I wish I could have talked about more, but this video will be an hour long, and I can't have that. Darius Alexander from Toledo. Plenty more defensive linemen, running backs, and wide receivers, but this is what I ended up going with, and more corners I could have talked about. But that'll do it. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you're on the channel, either Twitch or YouTube, maybe even both, for the NFL Combine stream. Watch along on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.